Sefer Yirmiyahu. We're up to Perek Mem Aleph, and we are in the middle of the story of the assassination of Gedaliah ben Achikam, which was after the Churban Beis Hamikdash, in commemoration of which we have the fast of Gedaliah on the 3rd of Tishrei. And remember, Gedaliah was warned by Yochanan ben Kareach that Yishmael ben Nesanya, who is a Yid, and in fact Yishmael ben Nesanya is Mizera Malchus Beis David, and Chazal say he thought he should become a Melech, and he was jealous of Gedaliah. There are some Makairis that say Gedaliah himself is Mizera HaMalucha. That's disputed, but Yishmael ben Nesanya beferish was. But Gedaliah is such a tzaddik that he's not Makabel Lashon Hara. So what happened? Perek Mem Aleph Pasuk Aleph. Vahi b'chodesh hashvi. It was the 7th month, which is Tishrei. This is after the Av of the Churban. Just 2 months later, less than 2 months later, Ba Yishmael ben Nesanya ben Elishama Mizara Hamlucha. Here it says beferish that Yishmael ben Nesanya was a descendant of David HaMelech. That's why he's jealous. For Rabbi HaMelech and various other officials, V'asara Anashim Itai, and he comes with 10 men, El Gedaliah ben Achikam HaMitzpasa, but he comes in the guise of friendship. Remember, Yishmael ben Nesanya had already pledged allegiance and support. Vayechlu sham lechem yachtov b'mitzpah, and they are eating bread together, they're having a meal in Mitzpah, the town of Mitzpah. And what happened was, Vayakam Yishmael ben Nesanya v'yaseres anashim shayu itai. Yishmael ben Nesanya and the 10 people that are with him, Vayaku es Gedaliah ben Achikam ben Shafan b'cherev v'yames Isai. They murdered him, asher hifgid melech Bavel b'oretz. The one that the Melech Bavel appointed to be the governor in the land was murdered. Now I want to point out that obviously this is why we have a fast of Tzom Gedaliah, because you have to understand it's not simply that a righteous man was murdered. L'tzarenu, many, over the years, great tzaddikim have been murdered. But this was really the hashlama. This was the completion of the Churban Beis Hamikdash. As long as Gedaliah was around, there was something in Eretz Yisrael from which a community could be built and a society could be reconstructed. This ended it. The Jews scattered. They didn't remain in Eretz Yisrael. For the next 52 years, Eretz Yisrael was so desolate. The Chazal say that there weren't even birds that flew over the land. So essentially, Tzom Gedaliah is the Gemar, the Makeh B'Patish, of the Churban Beis Hamikdash itself. I should also add that according to many Makairis, Gedaliah was actually killed on Rosh Hashanah itself. But since either the first day or the second day, but since we are not allowed to fast on a Yom Tov, so the fast had to be nitche to the first available day, which is the 3rd of Tishrei. The Navi does not say the exact date. The Navi simply says his assassination was B'chodesh Hashvi. Now Yishmael ben Nesanya not only killed Gedaliah, but he killed a lot of Gedaliah's supporters. Pasuk Gimel says, V'yeis kol ha-Yehudim asher hayu itai es Gedaliah b'mitzpah v'esakasam shenimsa sham. All of the Jews that were with Gedaliah, the Babylonians that were with him, es anshe ha-milchama hika Yishmael. Vayhi biyom hasheni lameses Gedaliah v'ish lo yada. And it was the next day, after Gedaliah was killed, and Ish lo yada, meaning the general public was not aware of what happened. Vayavayu anoshim mishchem mishilo umishomron. Men came to Mitzpah from Shechem, from Shiloh, from Shomron. This was the area of the 10 tribes that had been inhabited by some of the Anshe Yehuda. 80 men came. Migulachei Zokan. Their beards were shaven. Now this doesn't mean shaven, this actually means plucked, meaning in grief they had plucked the hair out of their beards. Kuruye begadim. In Avelos, their garments were ripped. Umisgaidedim, they even scratched their flesh. Umincha ulevaina biyadim, and they had meal offerings and frankincense offerings, spice offerings, to bring to the Beis Hashem. So, what's going on here is a little strange. And that actually means, as strange as it would be, and I really don't understand this at all, the people in Shechem, Shomron, and Shiloh were not aware that the Beis HaMikdash had been destroyed in Av. And they left their homes to bring a korban in the Beis HaMikdash. And then they came to Yerushalayim and they discovered that the Beis HaMikdash and the city was destroyed. And they pulled out their hair and they ripped their garments. And they scratched themselves with knives. And they're coming with these korbanos, the meal offerings, and the frankincense, the spice offerings. Now again, this doesn't mean ketores, because there's no such thing as private ketores, but the levina is something you bring with the mincha. The mincha, the kemitza of the mincha, is sacrificed with levina. And now they're coming to mitzvah because they were basically told, go to Gedaliah. Now the Meforshim point out that the notion of gedida, scratching yourself, because of mourning, is prohibited by the Torah, lo tiskaidedu. So how is it shaykh to be allowed to do it? I mean, the pashtus was, they were so samished, so confused, so devastated, that they weren't keeping the halacha properly. And it may show that they're kind of crazy, kind of insane. So, they wanted to bring korbanos, they couldn't bring korbanos. So they go to mitzvah to try to see Gedaliah and connect to Gedaliah. Pasuk Vav, Vayetze Yishmael ben Nesanya likrasam in a mitzvah. He comes to greet them. Holech holochu bocha, and he's also crying, saying, "Oy vey, the Beis Hamikdash." He wants to trick them that I feel like you. Vayhi kifgaishaisam, and when he meets them, Vayomer aleim, he says to them, Bayo el Gedaliah ben Achikim, let us come to Gedaliah, who will give us strength and give us comfort and give us chizuk. Vayehi kibayam el teicher, but when they enter mitzvah, vayishchetem shmishma ben Esanyel tochabor, he slaughters them and throws their bodies into a pit. Hu v'anashim, he and the men that are with him. Again, it's not clear why he did that. I mean, is he just going to kill everybody that he meets? But apparently he thought that these men were going to be so loyal to Gedaliah that when they hear he killed Gedaliah, they may kill him. So he kills them first. And among the 80 men, remember these are 80 men, quite a lot, 10 of the 80 beg for their lives. Right? 10 of the 80 beg. And they say, Vayomer el Yishmael, Al Tumisenu, do not kill us. Ki yesh lanu matzmonim basadeh, we have hidden treasures in the field that if you don't kill us, we'll show you where they are. Chitim usairim, wheat and barley, v'shemen, olive oil, devash, honey, again probably date honey. Vayachtal v'lo hamisam b'teichachayim. So because of this promise of wealth, he did not kill them, at least at that point in time. But the other ones were killed. The pit, the mass grave, in which he had thrown all of the corpses that he killed because of their loyalty to Gedaliah, Hu asher asa hamelech asa, mipnei basha melech Yisrael, oso mile Yishmael ben Nisanyo chalalim. So again, this is an obscure detail that's it's hard to understand a little bit. But Asa was one of the early Malchei Yehuda who was very, very righteous. And at some point in his reign, he was having a milchama against Basha, Melech Yisrael. And in order to keep Basha's army away from Asa's army, he dug a big trench, like a big ditch, so that Basha's army would be unable to cross it, like a moat. It may have even been filled with water at the time. So the pasuk is making the point that this ditch that a tzaddik had dug to protect his nation from a hostile attack, Yishmael uses that very ditch as a mass grave for 70 out of the 80 people that he killed who would be loyal to Gedaliah. And then the pasuk ends, Vayish b'Yishmael eskol she'eris ha'am asher b'mitzpah. He then captured, he rounded up all of the rest of the people in Mitzpah, the B'nai Samelech, the daughters of the king. Now the daughters of the king refers to, it's an interesting question, why were they not taken into Golus? But apparently there were women in the royal family who were not forced to leave Eretz Yisrael. And all of the other Am in Mitzpah that Nebuzaradan had appointed Gedaliah to be in charge of, and Yishmael captured them, and he transferred them. He left Eretz Yisrael. He went to Ammon, because after all it was Balas, the king of Ammon, that hired him. So basically Yishmael is not here anymore. Yishmael murdered people, and he took prisoners and slaves, and he left. So Yochanan ben Kareach was a supporter of Gedaliah, and in fact he warned Gedaliah of the assassination attempt. And the pasuk says, Vayishma Yochanan ben Kareach Chalsor Yechayom Sherita Eskol Hara Asher Asa Yishmael ben Asanya. He then heard about everything that happened. He was going to wage war against Yishmael ben Asanya. And he apprehended him by the big, apparently, Yishmael ben Asanya is running away to Ammon, but he was apprehended by the great streams of water, kind of the rivers, around Givain. That's where Yoshua stopped the sun. Vayehi kirais kol ha'am asher es Yishmael es Yochanan ben Kareach. When all of the people that Yishmael took prisoner sees Yochanan ben Kareach and the Sorei HaChayolim asher itai, Vayismachu, they're going to be liberated, they're going to be freed, they're going to be brought back to Eretz Yisrael. Vayasaibu kol ha'am asher shava Yishmael ben Mitzpah, and all of the people that Yishmael had captured from Mitzpah, Vayashuvu, they broke out. Vayelchu el Yochanan ben Kareach. So it turned out Yishmael lost all the people that he captured. Yishmael ben Nisanya, Yishmael ben Nisanya, Nimlat b'shmeina anashim. He escaped to Ammon with only 8 people besides himself. Vayelech el b'nei Ammon. He was going to bring a lot of slaves, a lot of captives. He lost everybody. Vayikach Yochanan ben Kareach v'chol Sorei HaChayolim asher itai. Yochanan ben Kareach and all of his officers took the she'eris the people that he liberated from Yishmael ben Nesanya min HaMitzpah, Achar Hikas Gedalia ben Achikam, right after Yishmael smote Gedalia, and he took prisoners from Mitzpah to take them to Ammon, and these people have now been liberated, Gevarim, Anshe Milchama, soldiers, Nashim, women, children, that Yochanan ben Kareach had retrieved from Gibeon. Vayelchu, Vayeshvu, Bagerus, Kimham, Asher Eitzel Beis Lechem. So he settled them. Gerus here does not mean stranger, it means residents. That they lived in a village called Kimham, adjacent to Beis Lechem, Loleches Lavoi Mitzrayim, that is on the way to go to Egypt, if you're going south. Mipnei HaKastim, and the reason why he moved away from Mitzvah towards this village which is on the way to Mitzrayim is because Yochanan ben Kireach is now afraid of the Babylonians. Because this would be seen as another rebellion against Melech Bavel. Because the Melech Bavel appointed Gedaliah to be his representative. And the Jews, under Yishmael, assassinate him. Now, granted, Yochanan ben Kireach B'davka didn't want that to happen. But he's afraid we're going to be accused of rebelling against Bavel. So as a result, we need to get out, and we're going to see that Yochanan ben Kareach actually wants the She'eris HaPleita to leave Eretz Yisrael and go to Mitzrayim, which at this particular time has not yet been conquered by Nebuchadnezzar. And therefore they moved towards Kimham, next to Beis Lechem, as a transit stop on the way to going to Mitzrayim.